Nick, good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Money Clinic. How are you keeping?
Yeah, all good here, Conor. The weather seems to have passed us by, unfortunately, but all good in Galway.
Pretty good. Are you happy with England's performance in the Euros thus far?
We're not winning it, I don't think, but there you go. That would be my forecast.
No, I don't. I don't see England winning the Euros. I can't see it. I don't think so. It's pretty competitive. Hard to look beyond maybe France and Belgium, but you never know in football. But anyway, more important issues. In the last 7 days, what's the latest? I see the good old Bitcoin. We've been talking about cryptos and that for a long time, but Bitcoin seemed to have fallen through the floor again. And in the last 7 days, what's been the latest in the markets?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin's back down to about 33,000. I think a lot of people are looking at 28,000 as being a key level. If it gets there, will it hold on to that level and bounce back? I'm still not sure how you invest in it, to be honest with you. The markets have been good this week. We had a bit of a sell-off last week, as we spoke about, after the Fed meeting and that forecast of rate rises towards the end of 23. It's been a bit of a recovery this week. We've seen Microsoft become the second $2 trillion company by market capitalization. And then one of the other stocks, GameStop, managed to raise $1 billion in their recent share sale. So, I think if they'd tried that maybe 3 or 4 months ago, before all of this Reddit Wall Street investments, they might have raised $50. But this week, or over the last couple of weeks, after all of the interest that we've seen in that stock, they managed to raise $1 billion. So hopefully they use it wisely, and it sees that company onto good things in the future.
So just on the GameStop situation, which has been going on for about 12 months, and it's made the headlines across the world. This GameStop is like a computer video game outlet company.
Yeah.
Nothing really sexy about it. But what has happened in the last 12 months is that this retail army has got involved in that stock, and that has caused loads of volatility. It's went up, it's went down, it's went up, it's went down. But the fundamentals behind GameStop, I mean, there's nothing overly exciting about it. There's no real reason why people should be investing in GameStop. Isn't that fair?
Yeah, no, it's all just this media frenzy that built up off of the back of the Reddit Wall Street bets fraternity, as it was. And we've seen a stock go from $10 up to $400, back down to $200. I think it will stabilize now because they've managed to raise $1 billion. So if they use it wisely, the value now might be in that stock. Maybe not quite at this level, but somewhere just below it. It's it's a rags to riches story over the last couple of months, and I think that the owners of the company and the people who are directing the company have worked it quite well, to be honest with you.
Okay, so you're going to show us a slide. Is it the Microsoft?
Yeah, just a quick one. Just show Microsoft here, just hitting that level, $2 trillion worth of market or by market cap this week. So trading at 265 at the moment. I was listening to somebody yesterday on CNBC. They forecast it going to $325 a share. So potentially a $3 trillion company going forward, and a battle between both Microsoft and Apple to see which sort of hits that level first, if it's feasible. But it's just another indication of how things are going in the markets at the moment. And technology stocks are the ones that are really back in interest. But you can see, as we look down on the right hand side here, you've got Bitcoin's price 33,000. Our good old friend Dodgy Coin down there at 23 cents. And so the guy who got out of those at 60 cents or whatever has done fantastically well. But the cryptos are definitely moving lower at this time.
And just over the next number of months, you just sense more continuous volatility with Bitcoin in particular. You don't really you don't have great sense of confidence in Bitcoin and crypto.
No, I think a lot of people are looking at this 28,000 level to see whether it will be supported there. Look, if Elon Musk, Tesla start to move some of their holding in Bitcoin, this could fall very, very quickly and very aggressively. You have to ask yourself who's holding out there at the moment, and when are they going to start folding if this value keeps dripping down.
whenever I spoke to our friend in South in Argentina, Rod, we talked about the impact of Musk, and he didn't think it was a really positive thing that someone like that could have such an influence. But we do know that Tesla, the treasury of Tesla, bought $1.5 billion dollars. But I was interested because Rod was saying that the word is that Musk personally maybe bought $5 billion dollars of Bitcoin. That's what they're saying in the pubs, I suppose, which is a huge investment, if nothing else. So let's see. We talked last week, Nick, about the housing market. Do you want to pick that up a little bit for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I was just reading a report in one of the local newspapers yesterday in Galway. There's a big new housing development, and it's been going on for 15, 16 years. It was going to be a huge shopping centre back in the Celtic Tiger days, but now that they've repurposed it, it's going to be accommodation and principally flats or rental flats. But the key piece of news this week, which is touching on what we spoke about last week, is that all of the properties will go to the rental market. None of them are for sale. They're all going to the rental market. And I thought that was just a huge sea change. Like growing up in, like I've never rented property, only when I lived overseas. It's always been my aspiration to buy. I think it's the best form of investment you can make. It always goes up as long as you can hold through those troubled times. But, what are you seeing from that sort of perspective?
Well, I think one of the big observations I would make in relation to what you just said, and really the funding space in Ireland, is the sort of growth of private equity and these huge funds who have now sort of been living in Ireland probably for the last 10 years. I mean, RTE ran a documentary about 4 or 5 years ago, Who's Buying Ireland? And they looked at all of these funds like Goldman Sachs and Cerberus and Apollo, and I mean, every big company in Wall Street seems to have a plaque sitting in Dublin, and they have seen Ireland as a great place to invest their huge armory of funds. And I think to be quite honest, to keep it really simple, is Ireland would be seen internationally as a tax haven. A lot of these funds pay very, very little tax. But I think the interesting thing from a property perspective then, and obviously we have a funding business, is there's a wall of money out there now. So I'm interested in this Galway scheme, because you're saying that, there's 300 odd apartments, and what you've said is that they're going to be rented out, they're not going to be sold.
Yeah.
And that tells me, if you were to lift the bonnet on whoever's developing that scheme, I'm pretty certain that there's some kind of private equity or huge fund behind that. And what they've probably been able to do is de-risk that development, because all of these kinds of projects are ultimately, they're not housing projects, they're financial models. And what I'm seeing in my business, whether it's green energy, property development, whatever it is, if you bring a project to a bank or to a funder, unless you're in a position to de-risk that project, then the chances of you getting funding for that scheme is going to be much more difficult, right? So a lot of these schemes, what I mentioned to you before we hit record, I noticed a huge French private equity company is now moving into the nursing home space in Ireland. They're buying up nursing homes. And what do they want to buy nursing homes for? Well, because there's long-term contracted income. That's why they want to buy nursing homes, because they can park a chunk of money and they can get a return on that money over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think the opportunity in housing in Ireland, we know that there's a huge housing crisis. We don't have enough housing, but I see some of these funds, the cheaper money, which is out there, being part of the solution for the housing crisis in Ireland. Because if there's that much money available, then someone has to come up with this idea, how do we de-risk that? And one of the ways to do it is to build houses and rent it. Because what in Galway, I would imagine that in Galway, there's probably going to be a queue of people who will be more than willing to rent those properties.
Absolutely. There's a huge shortage. You see it wherever you look, and prices are increasing as a result of it. And eventually people will get priced out as well. And then what do they turn to? And, it goes back to that whole housing crisis that we're seeing.
And whether it's Tyrone or Galway or Meath or Cork, there's no supply.